Northwest of the Kiju Mountains, Mount Baiso. A traveler was walking along the ridge of Mount Baiso. His sturdy walking staff and thick clothes were no different from any other travelers, but his head was cleanly shaven. He was no doubt a monk, but it was a bit atypical to find a monk around here in the Kiju Mountains. No temple nor any village was located in the vicinity. However, the monk seemed far from lost. The monk was climbing down the Baiso Canyon, and a few structures were built next to the flowing stream. Located in a nook sheltered from wind, these shacks looked to have been built by either gold prospectors or hunters. The monk steadily hiked down toward the shack. It suddenly became dark. As the monk was wondering if a cloud had covered the sun, a gust of wind blew abruptly behind him. The strong wind knocked the monk off his feet, tumbling him forward. Thankfully, he was stopped by a bush, averting the predicament of falling down all the way to the bottom of the canyon. Panting, the frightened monk turned his head to the sky. Then his jaw dropped. A colossal skyfish has appeared from behind the mountain the monk had climbed down. The pectoral fins were so enormous that it was impossible to see the entirety without turning his head. Its mouth looked as if it could devour a mountain, and the thousands of eyes scattered behind it sparkled with numerous brilliant colors. As it was difficult to keep staring at the eyes, the monk averted his gaze a bit more toward the back. He exclaimed with wonder. What others had been talking about were there: fallen towers and walls, colonnades, and a hemispherical roof blazing in the sun. The monk realized they were not nearly as extravagant as what others have been claiming. People talk about gem-studded columns and roofs covered in gold. Of course, it was merely the result of interpreting the reflection of sunlight with their lowly desires. What was on the skyfish's back was but an ancient ruin fallen under the weight of time immemorial. There, not sparkling stones or yellow metal, but the accumulation of time itself was blazing brilliantly. The monk wept. Much time passed, watching the colossal fish float across the sky carrying a rune on its back, and the monk heard a commotion from the bottom of the canyon. Suppressing his lingering emotion, the monk got up to sit and turned his gaze to below. Then, he was both surprised and concerned at what was happening there. At the bottom of the canyon, 3 horses were standing in a group. It was similar to an arrangement for a carriage, but it was a bit different. Firstly, the middle horse of the 3 had a rider mounted on top. Also, although the horses were wearing a yoke, it was not connected to a carriage. A long and sturdy-looking rope was connected to the yoke, and people were tied to it at the other end. They were carrying particular objects which the monk recognized, but had never before seen in person. They were enormous rectangular kites. The difference, however, was that they were several hundred times larger than regular kites. The monk groaned as he understood why they needed the horses. At that moment, it appeared there was a signal the monk could not hear. The horses broke into a gallop abruptly. The people at the bottom of the canyon were well prepared. The horses were running in the direction suitable for facing the canyon wind. The ropes became taut, launching the kites into the air. There were 5 kites. The monk understood it is possible to use the horses to launch the kites, but he wondered if the horses can still be used to support or control them. At that moment, the monk discovered a different set of ropes, other than the ones connected to the horses, ran from the kites. The monk looked to see where these ropes were leading to. They were connected to a giant pulley fixed on the ground. The monk marveled again at their preparedness. The horses were only used to pull up the kites. Then it appeared the kites were to be controlled by the pulley acting as a giant spool. As the monk predicted, the people hanging from the kites pulled out their daggers. They cut off the ropes connecting the kites to the horses, freeing the kites to soar into the sky. However, the separate set of ropes stayed connected to the pulley, which was being handled by several large men. They were undertaking an intrepid plan, aiming to land on the Skyfish using kites. Although the monk believed they had almost no chance of success, their adventurous spirit moved him, and he cheered them on silently with tightly clenched fists. At that moment, the monk realized one of the kites was having a problem. There was a kite which did not soar like the other 4 kites, left wavering unstably. Surprised, the monk observed the kite and realized the kite was still connected to the horses. What happened? The monk opened his eyes wide to look closely. Soon, the monk found the person on kite has cut the wrong rope. This person has cut the rope connected to the pulley, not the one connected to the horses. At the bottom of the canyon, people were screaming and throwing curses, and the horse rider was lashing out aggressive words in exasperation. The kite was soaring with tremendous power, and it would seem even the horses would get dragged up as well. As if he has come to a harsh decision, the rider unsheathed his sword. Although the monk shouted to note negativity, he was too far away to reach him. As soon as the rider cut the rope, the kite soared high into the sky. The monk bolted up to his feet and stared at the kite. The kite, which had both ropes cut, has lost all connections to the ground and wavered in the wind helplessly. The monk felt as though he was going crazy with sympathy for the kite rider. The person on the kite would be scared to death. The kite finally began to descend slowly. As if it was being pushed, the kite fell toward the ridge the monk was on. At the moment of impact, the monk could not help but turn his head away. There was a loud crash. The monk sprinted toward the kite, keeping his hand pressed against his racing heart. Preparing for the terrible fate the kite rider has met, the monk mourned the death of the unfortunate soul. He was so attached to his life that he refused to die and got on his feet to start lashing out. The monk was stunned at the impossible sight. The kite rider was violently ripping out the harness from his body, cursing at everything around him that he could see. Even if the kite were able to reduce the fall speed, the speed at the impact would surely have pulverized his entire body. What is happening with him? Then, the monk realized the man was almost 3 meters tall. The monk had not realized how tall he was until now because of the enormity of the kite. The monk soon understood the situation. However, as his flutter did not subside quickly, the monk asked with a trembling voice, "Sir, are you okay? What? You making fun of me?" The man whirled to face the monk, brandishing his terrifying beak. The monk felt his knuckles turn white. "I was passing by, but I ran here when I saw you fall. Are you hurt?" The man, who could not control himself due to wrath, began to soften his voice a little. "No, I'm not hurt." "Shit, I said I'm not hurt. You good now?" "Amazing. You're fine even after falling from that height. You would have surely died if you were not a lekon." The lekon produced a snapping noise with his beak. It was a gesture analogous to a human's scoff. Unable to hide his awe, the monk studied the lekon's limbs. Feathers at a few spots were soaked in blood from apparent lacerations, but it looked like nothing was broken. The monk almost wanted to touch him. However, the lekon did not care whether the monk was staring at him, and looked toward the remaining 4 kites. The monk also turned his head to the sky. The remaining kites were approaching the Skyfish. The lekon stomped anxiously. "Come on, just a little bit more. Just a little more. Oh, God is below all. Please, unwind the rope more, you knuckleheads." However, fortune was far from these daring adventurers. To elaborate, it was about 100 meters farther. The rope has run out about 100 meters from the Skyfish. The kites flew around side to side agitatedly, not knowing what to do, but the Skyfish continued to pass above them without hurry. The people at the bottom of the canyon had to make a decision before the kites ran into danger. Seeing they began to rewind the ropes, the lekon screamed, "No!" Clenching his comb, the lekon sank to the ground. The monk consoled him. "It was an audacious plan. I almost thought they would succeed. If the Skyfish had been flying a bit lower, they would have made it for sure." The lekon did not seem to hear the monk. He only sat stupefied, watching the pectoral fins of the skyfish leisurely swimming away to the other side of the sky. The skyfish was swimming the same way it always has. The fact that it nearly made contact with earthly beings for the first time in thousands of years since they began their solitary flight, and the fact that this contact fell short by just 100 meters did not seem to affect the skyfish in any way. The skyfish disappeared to the other side of the sky, completely indifferent. By the time the skyfish finally disappeared into the other side of the mountains, much time had passed. The monk, who was still deeply touched, looked back at the sound of the lekon standing up to dust his feathers. The lekon grumbled as he looked back at the destroyed kite, then suddenly shouted in anger. "Lops, you shithead! I'll kill you! We were 100 meters short!" The monk did not know who Lops was, but it was evident his life was in danger. The monk tried to stop the lekon, but the lekon was already running down the mountain slope. The monk ran hastily after the lekon, who was sprinting away in a motion that was closer to flying. The monk, who finally arrived at the bottom of the canyon, was on the verge of passing out, but he soon figured the situation was not as serious as he had thought. Although the lekon was expressing his anger at a shaggy human who the monk assumed was Lops, Lops was surprisingly confident facing the lekon. Even more so, Lops was intimidating the lekon. "Hey, Captain Scumbag, we would have had enough rope left over if you hadn't thrown a tantrum to force yourself on the kite too. And after I let you on to appease your stubborn ass, you then cut the wrong rope and destroy your kite?" The monk opened his eyes wide at surprise. No human could act like that. Only a fellow lekon is allowed to treat another lekon like this. Observing Lops with astonishment, the monk soon realized what Lops was. "Shit, I was excited. I was too excited that I was finally getting on top of the skyfish and I didn't even know. And even if I did cut the right rope, we wouldn't have made it. The other kites didn't get on it either. That's why you shouldn't have insisted in the first place that you want to get on the kite. We tried to stop you. Your stubborn ass is the reason we didn't have enough rope. We didn't have enough rope for others because we had to lift you up, Captain." The lekon breathed like a storm, but did not have a comeback. The bystanders gathered nearby just stood there chuckling, as if they knew this would happen, and none seemed to worry about Lops' life. At that moment, Lops caught the monk. "Huh? What are you looking at, Baldy? You lost something?" The monk did not become angry at his rudeness. If he had guessed correctly, Lops was not currently human. Therefore, the monk politely responded, joining his palms together in front of him. "My name is Orinal. I came here because I wish to speak with the lekon here." Surprised, the lekon blinked. "What do you mean? I thought you said you were passing by." "I was heading here. I came to meet with a lekon named Tinahan, who is the leader of this encampment, but it looks like you're him." "Yeah, I'm Tinahan, but why do you want to see me?" "I'm from the Grand Temple of Hainsha." Tinahan's comb suddenly stiffened. Lops also looked around cautiously and quickly replied, "Oh, I see. Would you like to step inside? Did you change to a human now?" "Sorry? Oh no, I'm Tokebi. Would you rather speak with a Kim?" Smiling, Orinal nodded toward the Soul Harborer. "Since you have a human body, it would help to speak with a human as well." As Orinal expected, Lops was a soul harborer. If not for a soul harborer who carries multiple souls, who would dare behave so insolently against a lekon? Lops had probably advanced a lekon's soul when he was dealing with Tinahan earlier. With a human's soul advanced forward as Orinal requested, Lops escorted him to a nearby shack with Tinahan. Others wanted to follow as well, but Lops chased them away. Inside the shack was dark and messy. Tinahan grabbed one end of the table with a pile of tools and junk on top to simply lift and move it out of the way, then let Orinal sit on the chair next to it. Then, Lops brought a bottle of alcohol and a bowl from a chest and placed them on the table. However, Orinal declined as he was a monk. Lops shrugged, then put the bowl away. Then he drank a sip from the bottle, and passed it to Tinahan. I don't have anything else. Would you like some water instead? Thank you, but it's fine. It looks like I arrived at the perfect time. I was blessed to witness an amazing spectacle. You could have also witnessed our success. If only Tinahan had let go of his stubbornness, that is. As he was replying, Lops gave Tinahan a sour look. Tinahan snapped his beak, and Oronel smiled. As everyone closed their mouths, horrible silence surrounded the table briefly. Tinahan shouted as if he could not stand it. Fine, you said you're Oronel, so how long are we overdue? It's been half a year. Shocked, Tinahan looked back at Lops. Lops replied with a pale face. It's already... No, how did the time pass so fast? I'm so sorry. We weren't aware of the time passing because we were in such a remote area. We definitely weren't trying to pocket your money. Yes, I understand. The Grand Temple does not doubt your sincerity. We were certain there was a misunderstanding, so I came here to clarify it. After saying this, Oronel smiled a bit apologetically. It would have also been wonderful if I was able to see you succeed. We could have made it, you saw that. Tinahan pounded the table. Obviously, the table was smashed. Oronel and Tinahan stared at the destroyed table with a stunned look, while Lops groaned, tearing his hair out. Wow, you really do ruin everything. Shit. Tinahan drooped his head. Lops pushed the broken pieces of the table aside and spoke calmly, feeling a bit better. I'll be honest, we are not in a situation to pay the principal back, let alone the interest. I would have given you this table if I could, but unfortunately our esteemed captain smashed it to pieces as well. But we can still do this. You saw it with your eyes, so I don't think I need to explain more. Our plan is perfect. Ah yes, it was an amazing sight. I wasn't very sure about this when I was leaving the Grand Temple, but now I think I can fully believe in you. Of course, it looks extremely dangerous, but I suppose there is a chance of success as well. But I was wondering, how were you going to come back down if you had actually succeeded? We were going to climb down the rope to come back. When the kites land on top of the Skyfish, the people at the pulley would cut the rope from their end. Then the people above would be able to climb down the rope anytime they want. Oronel wondered if these people in front of him even had a tinge of sanity. To think one would have to climb down a rope from well over 2,000 meters high, there was no way Oronel could even imagine attempting it himself. Before the image began to form in his head, Oronel quickly changed the subject. I understand, but it doesn't change the fact you haven't succeeded yet. Isn't that correct? We can do this. Please give us some more time. What you saw earlier was something like a final practice. Right, that's one way to put it. We're done preparing and practicing, so we'll make it for sure the next time. Yes, I hope you do. Surprised, Lops opened his eyes wide. Are you giving us more time? Tinahan also stared at Oronel, bursting with hope. Oronel removed the prayer beads hung around his wrists and toyed with it for a while, then replied, How much more would we need to wait? A painful look appeared on Lops. After a long hesitation, Lops finally spoke. We need about 6 months. Oronel peered at Lops, turning him red with embarrassment. Oronel spoke quietly. Do you mean we need to wait half a year longer? We can definitely succeed in half a year. We have already extensively researched the migration patterns of skyfishes. Please give me a moment. I'll bring the notebook we have written. Then Lops brought back a heavy book from a stack in the corner of the shack. The notebook made by binding pieces of parchment was showing signs of frequent use with its tattered corners. Using the numbers and symbols recorded on the book, Lops proceeded to bewilder Oronel. Although Oronel did not understand most of Lops' rant, he did somewhat understand the conclusion. Lops seemed confident that out of the 7 skyfishes projected to pass through the Baiso Canyon, 2 will be at adequate altitudes. The other 5 are much larger. No one knows exactly why, but we do know that larger skyfishes tend to fly higher. Of course, the larger ones carry even more amazing runes, but it's difficult to fly to them. Even from the Spiso Canyon, which we think has the best wind blowing in, we won't be able to fly that high. Only the tiny ones, like the one you saw today. Orono groaned at this point. Fly at the altitude we can reach with our kites. So if we want to wait for these kitties, we need at least 6 more months. Thank you for your explanation. However, I do have a bit of concern regarding your plan. Lops glared. A concern? You got a problem with our prediction? Seeing Lop's way of speech had changed, it appeared a lekon's soul has leapt forward again. Orono spoke cautiously. No, not at all. I have only seen a skyfish for the first time today. My concern regards your team. You mentioned you won't even be able to pay for the interest, but how do you plan to live here for the next 6 months? Lops blinked a few times at a loss for words, then closed the book with a sigh. Tinahan replied, frowning. Damn it. It'll be difficult, but we can push through. There's food around Mount Baiso. We'll manage for 6 months somehow, so you don't need to worry about it. You just need to push back the repayment deadline. I saw you have a lot of people on your team. You have horses too. We can still manage. We can plow with our horses if anything. If all of you starve to death or run away in 6 months, we won't be able to collect our loan. That won't happen. I will get on top of a skyfish. Orono started toying with his prayer beads again. Tinahan thought the beads were annoying, but he had enough discernment to not speak ill of it. Lops, on the other hand, was fighting the urge to plug his ears, in case the young monk decides to confiscate all the equipment on the basis of impracticality. Then Orono spoke. I have a proposal. What? What proposal? The Grand Temple requires a lekon. A lekon? Yes, the Grand Temple wishes that Tinahan carry out a certain task. If you can do this, we will waive the entire amount we have loaned you so far. Also, we will loan you additional fund you need for the next 6 months. Tinahan and Lops were stunned at this extraordinary offer. Lops was the first to bring himself together. Then he spoke. Could you tell us more about this task? Are you human again? I do apologize, but I can only divulge the information to the person assigned to the task. But I can say that it will take about 4 months, and that it's extremely dangerous. Lops figured what Orono added at the end was aimed at Tinahan. No lekon runs from dangerous tasks. As expected, Tinahan retorted, how dangerous? But Orono's warning was sincere. Orono gave Tinahan a worried look. Maybe I can put it like this. It's as dangerous as falling in water. Tinahan's comb stiffened.